A few months ago, I checked into a budget hotel that felt oddly charming. I was 32, traveling for work as a travel journalist, and I thought I'd found a hidden gem. The peeling wallpaper and humming fluorescent lights caught my eye. It felt nostalgic in some strange way. But now, I can't shake the feeling that I shouldn't have stayed there at all. The first night passed without issue, but the second night was different. I took out my room key and tried to unlock the door. It didn't budge. I felt a chill in the air, like something was off. I jiggled the key again, and this time it clicked open. When I stepped in, I felt a sudden coldness, as if someone had just left the room. I looked around, but it was just the same old hotel amenities, nothing special. That night, I fell asleep uneasy. I woke up later to strange murmurs coming from the lobby. I tried to ignore them. When I stepped into the hallway, it felt like someone was watching me. But every time I spun around, I found nothing there. Maybe I was just tired. I thought it might be my imagination. In the morning, I went down for breakfast. I noticed bits of conversation floating around me. People mentioned guests who never really left the hotel and whispered about something strange in room 213. My stomach dropped at that. I wanted to ask more, but I figured it wasn't my place, so I just sipped my coffee and stayed quiet. Later, I wandered through the common areas. That's when I saw it, a worn-out doll sitting alone in a corner. Its button eyes stared right at me. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and I turned away quickly. But I couldn't shake it. There was something about that doll. As I backed away, I found a tattered diary on a bench. It was filled with frantic notes about the hotel, each line dripping with fear. Whoever wrote it had clearly felt something was very wrong. I couldn't look away. I was drawn to it. As night fell again, I tried to put my worries aside, but I couldn't stop thinking about those guests. I wasn't sure if the whispers were real or just a figment of my tired mind. The doll and the diary stayed in my thoughts. They felt like warnings. Laying in bed, I wondered if I was about to leave this place the same as I came. I could hear a soft scratching at my door. My heart raced. I didn't know what was on the other side. Then a voice whispered my name from the hallway. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I thought back to that morning when I heard those conversations, the mentions of guests who never left. I realized I was caught in something unknown. Maybe I shouldn't have checked in at all. I lay there in silence, my mind racing, waiting to see if whoever, or whatever, was out there would come in. It felt like time stood still. I kept my eyes on the door, willing it to stay shut, but my instinct urged me to get up. I couldn't ignore the voice. After what felt like hours, I gathered my courage. I crept out of bed and tiptoed towards the door. I pressed my ear against it. I could still hear the soft scratching, but now it seemed to come in bursts, as if something was trying to get in. My heart pounded loudly in my chest. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. There was no response, just the sound of continued scratching. I hesitated. I felt the icy draft seep in. Something wasn't right. I turned the lock slowly, but stopped before opening the door fully. Peeking through the gap, I saw nothing. The hallway was empty, the lights flickering as they had before. A sense of dread settled over me. I took a deep breath and stepped outside. The air was cold and heavy. I walked down the corridor, the hairs on my neck standing on end. I felt a pull towards room 213, the one mentioned by the breakfast crowd. The whispers started to echo in my mind again. But before I could think further, a door swung open to my left. A thin woman in a worn-out nightgown stood there, her eyes wide and pleading. "You shouldn't be out here," she said, her voice trembling. "They'll get you too." I was taken aback. "Who will get me?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked over her shoulder fearfully, as if expecting someone to come at any moment. "The ones who never left," she said, a shiver running through her. "You have to be careful. They don't want you to find out." I glanced at her room number. It was 213. My stomach dropped. "Have you seen what's in there?" I asked, suddenly desperate for answers. She nodded, her face pale. "You don't belong here. No one does. Some doors are best left closed." Before I could respond, she slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, stunned. What was happening? I felt compelled to knock, to demand answers, but something inside me warned against it. I turned to walk away when I noticed it. The worn doll from earlier. It had somehow made its way to the hallway. It sat at the edge, its button eyes gleaming eerily in the dim light. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up, unsure why it felt so significant. That's when I heard a voice behind me, clear as day. "You should have left it alone." I spun around. Empty hallway. Just me, the doll, and an uneasy silence. Panic surged through me. I couldn't stay there any longer. As I raced back to my room, the temperature dropped suddenly. The walls felt like they were closing in. I scrambled inside, locking the door behind me. This wasn't just a hotel. I realized I needed to find a way out. I had to uncover the truth about room 213 and what it was hiding before it was too late. I stood in my room, the doll clutched tightly in my hands. Its button eyes seemed to watch me, and I could almost feel its chilling gaze piercing through the silence. I pressed it against my chest, feeling ridiculous for seeking comfort in an inanimate object. It was just a doll, but in that moment, it felt like my only connection to the strange happenings around me. I moved to the window, scanning the dimly lit parking lot below. It was eerily quiet. I thought about trying to escape, but where would I go? This place felt like a maze. The pull toward room 213 remained strong, a dark curiosity that gnawed me. I made up my mind. I had to know what was hidden behind that door. With a shaky breath, I set down the doll and grabbed the thin flashlight from my backpack. I crept back to the hallway, peering into the shadows. This time, I was more aware of every sound. Distant whispers, a faint rustle, even the fading flicker of the lights above me felt charged, as though they too were alive. Before I could lose my resolve, I headed toward room 213. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the walls were closing in. I reached the door and hesitated. What if the woman was right? What if whatever was inside wanted to trap me too? I placed my hand against the cool wood, letting out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The unsettling silence pressed down on me, urging me to act. My fingers danced across the handle, and I turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing darkness beyond. I shone my flashlight inside, illuminating fragments of a room that looked untouched by time. The bed was neatly made, but it felt wrong, a stark contrast to the unease that bubbled under the surface. I stepped inside, my heart racing. That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure at the back of the room. My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure didn't move, just stood there, shrouded in darkness. "Leave," it intoned, a raspy whisper that sent chills down my spine. As fear took hold, the door behind me slammed shut, plunging the room into an eerie silence.
I whipped around, panic surging through me. I banged on the door, yelling for help, but my voice echoed back at me, swallowed by the darkness. I scoured the room for an exit, but found only the thick, ominous air pressing down tighter. "You've disturbed the peace," the figure hissed again, stepping closer. Before I could run, the doll, still in my pocket, felt warm against my skin. My eyes widened as I reached for it. Maybe it held some kind of answer. But then, the floor beneath me began to tremble. My eyes darted toward the figure, its face finally revealing itself through the dim light. It was a ghostly visage of the woman I had spoken to earlier, her expression one of anger and despair. Now I had to choose: confront the ghost and uncover its secrets, or flee back into the unknown. But just as the decision loomed, the lights flickered one last time and were gone, leaving me in absolute darkness. I could hear soft weeping in the room, but it wasn't bitter. It was haunting, echoing all around me. The sense of urgency surged, and I knew I had to act fast before the shadows claimed me too. I could feel the cold air thickening around me, wrapping me in a shroud of fear. The weeping continued, a soft wail that tugged at my heart, mixing with the tremors of the floor.
I wanted to scream, to kick the door down, but I stood frozen, paralyzed by the sight of the ghostly figure. "Why are you here?" I finally managed to ask. My voice trembled, barely more than a whisper. But the apparition only offered a hollow stare, its sadness seeping in like a slow poison. Something in me urged me to back away, to put distance between us. But the doll in my pocket felt like a spark in the darkness, guiding me. I pulled it out, its warmth pulsating against my palm. "What do you want?" I said, louder this time, trying to summon courage. The ghost's gaze flickered to the doll, and then back to me. "It knows," she rasped, her voice a blend of sorrow and warning. "You must leave. You do not belong here." With a sudden jolt, the walls seemed to vibrate in resonance with her words. My heart raced as I felt the ground tremble more violently. "Why are you warning me?" I demanded. "What happened to you?" The atmosphere shifted, the shadows thickened. I could barely see her face, but the sorrow transformed into pain. "Trapped," she gasped, her figure shaking as if caught in a tempest. "Trapped like us." "Us?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. I scanned the darkness for any hint of another presence, my heart thudding. Then, out of the dim light, I noticed movement, a shadow creeping along the walls, growing larger. My breath caught in my throat. Around the room, whispers began to rise, swirling together in a whirlwind of sounds. They called out to me, words blending into unintelligible chaos. I stumbled backward, the doll slipping from my fingers and hitting the floor with a soft thud. As soon as the doll hit the ground, an explosion of light burst from its eyes, illuminating the room. The shadows recoiled as I fell to my knees, gasping. The ghost, now more defined, stood before me, her face twisted in desperation. "Don't let it take you," she urged, reaching out. "Don't become part of the darkness." I scrambled to grab the doll, my pulse racing at the realization that the object had power. But just as I grasped it, a force pulled at my legs, dragging me across the floor. The room felt alive, angry. Fear erupted within me as I fought against the unseen grip that threatened to swallow me. "No!" I screamed, clawing at the floor, but the darkness was relentless. In an instant, I understood. The doll was the key to both my escape and my unraveling. It connected me both to the ghost and to the shadows. I had to decide, and I had to do it fast. Just as I tensed my muscles to launch myself toward the door, I heard one final whisper. "Find the truth before it's too late." Then the lights flickered out again, leaving me in panic and uncertainty, the pull of darkness intensifying. I was running out of time, and the ghost's warning echoed in my mind. I needed to uncover the truth behind room 213, or I might never leave this night behind. I scrambled to my feet, the cold floor biting into my skin as I fought against the panic clawing at my throat. The darkness pressed in, and I could hardly see. I clutched the doll tightly, its eyes still glowing faintly, a reminder of the ghost and her warning. The whispers twisted around me, growing louder. I had to move. With a deep breath, I bolted toward the door, fumbling for the handle. My heart raced as I turned it slowly, fear setting in that it might be locked. But the door swung open with a creak, and I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. I paused to collect myself, leaning against the wall. The corridor was dimly lit, and I noticed strange markings on the walls, patterns that looked like desperate scratches. They appeared fresh, like someone had clawed at the surface. Anxiety surged in me. What kind of madness happened here? I remembered the ghost's words. There was something more to uncover. I had to find out what really happened in room 213 before I could consider leaving. Maybe the staff at this hotel had answers. I started toward the staircase, the light flickering overhead as if agreeing with my anxiety. As I descended the steps, the suspecting echoes of my footsteps seemed to follow me. I rounded the corner into the small lobby area. The hotel was quiet, almost too quiet. The reception desk stood empty, and I felt a chill wash over me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. "Is anyone here?" No response came. I ventured further into the lobby, feeling the weight of the doll in my pocket. It felt alive, as if it were communicating with the shadows around me. I took a seat in a worn-out chair, trying to catch my breath, but the air felt thick and stifling. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted movement at the far end of the room. My breath quickened as I squinted into the darkness. It was a figure, tall and shrouded in shadow. It shifted, its presence overwhelming. Just when I thought it would reveal itself, it disappeared into the corridor leading to the basement. I could either follow or retreat back to the safety of my room. But I remembered the ghost's panic, the urgency in her voice. I had to know. With hesitation, I stood and crept toward the basement door. It was slightly ajar, rusted hinges protesting against my touch. I pushed it open and stepped into the pitch-black space below. The air was colder here. Every breath felt like ice. As I descended, the doll felt warmer, pulsing against my chest. Just then, I heard the echo of footsteps behind me. I whipped around, but the basement was empty. My heart raced again, the feeling of being followed pressing against my back. "Who's there?" I shouted into the dark, anxiety pushing my voice higher. Silence. Just as I turned back to the stairs, a voice whispered my name, calling from the shadows. "Help me." That voice, a familiar echo of the ghost. I took a hesitant step forward. "Where are you?" I called. But now there was a sense that I wasn't just following a voice. I had become part of the haunted mystery of this hotel, drawn deeper into its secrets. I had to find that truth. Otherwise, I might not be the only one trapped here. The chill settled around me like a heavy blanket as I moved deeper into the basement. The glowing eyes of the doll seemed to pierce through the dark, guiding me toward the source of that desperate voice. "Help me," echoed again, more insistent this time. I stepped cautiously, each footfall swallowed by the damp ground. The walls felt slick, and I could smell the mold rising from the corners. I was overwhelmed by a sense that something was wrong, so very wrong. I could almost hear the heartbeat of the house.
"Show yourself," I ventured, my voice barely above a whisper. The doll in my pocket radiated warmth, urging me to go on. As I took another step, a flicker of light caught my eye, drawing me toward a narrow passageway ahead. Gingerly, I moved closer. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, and I felt an unsettling blend of fear and curiosity. I needed to know what waited for me in that darkened spot. With a deep breath, I stepped into the corridor, the light growing brighter as I went. As I turned the corner, I found myself in a small room cluttered with broken furniture and dusty boxes. At its center lay an old wooden table, and on the table, a single candle flickered, casting dancing shadows that gave life to the stillness around me. Then I saw a figure slumped over it, a woman in a tattered dress, her hair hanging long and tangled over her face. Are you okay?" I stammered, every instinct urging me to turn and leave. The figure didn't respond. Instead, she lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were hollow, a darkness echoing within them, a haunting reflection of despair. "It's too late," she rasped, her voice filled with a sorrow that chilled me to the bone. "They won't let you leave." "Who won't?" I pressed, desperate for information. But she only pointed toward the far wall, her hand trembling. "Find the truth in the shadows. They crave a soul." Suddenly, the candle flickered violently, and I felt the temperature drop. A shadow darted across the wall, and the whispering returned, thick and urgent, wrapping around me like a noose. "Help us," they cried, a chorus of voices drowning out my thoughts. Panic clawed at my chest. The doll in my pocket began to vibrate, as if sensing the danger. I backed away slowly, scanning the room for an exit. The woman's hollow eyes locked onto mine. "You must leave now," she said, but her voice was lost within the growing whispers. Before I could react, the shadows pooled at my feet, forming a shape that began to rise. Something was coming for me. My instincts kicked in, and I turned, running toward the way I had entered. But right before I reached the corridor, the floor beneath me shifted. The shadows crept closer, solidifying into a slithering darkness. Panic surged through me as I stumbled. I needed a way out. Then, in the confusion, I remembered the ghost's warning about uncovering what had happened in this place. I dashed back toward the flickering candle, my heart pounding. Just as I got close enough to hear the woman's voice again, the air screamed with fury, a flash of light blared. And then, everything went dark. Light rushed back in, sharp and blinding, pulling me from the darkness. For a moment, I was disoriented, struggling to catch my breath. I found myself sprawled on the cold, damp floor of the small room, the flickering candle still burning, though now it struggled against a growing gust of wind. Rising to my feet, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The air was thick with a presence. I could feel it, something lurking just beyond sight. My heart raced as I scanned the shadows. The woman had vanished, leaving behind the lingering chill of her despair. The walls seemed to whisper now, alive with soft, urgent murmurs. I turned to the far wall where she had pointed. There was something there that I hadn't noticed before. A faint outline of what looked like a door, hidden beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. With hesitant steps, I moved toward it, my fingers trembling as I brushed aside the decay of time. As I pushed against the door, it creaked open slowly, revealing another dark space beyond. The air grew heavier, the whispers turned into a chaotic murmur. I stepped inside, reflexively clutching the doll in my pocket, its warmth acting as a fragile shield against the encroaching fear. The new room was smaller, with only a few rays of light filtering in through a cracked window. Piles of forgotten belongings cluttered the floor. But what captured my attention was an old mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. The glass was clouded, but I could make out faint shapes moving behind me. I spun around quickly, but nothing was there. I approached the mirror hesitantly. Its surface shimmered as if it were alive, pulling me closer. Swallowing hard, I leaned in, heart hammering. That's when I saw it. A reflection of the woman standing behind me with a desperate look in her eyes. Panic surged through me. I whirled around again, but she had vanished, leaving no trace. "Why are you showing me this?" I shouted into the dark space, my voice echoing back. The whispers reached a fever pitch, pulling at my psyche. I pressed a hand against my temple, trying to find a way to silence them. Suddenly, one voice rose above the others, clear and strong. "You have to choose," it commanded. "Help us or become one of us." I staggered backward, colliding with an old chest. It toppled over, spilling its contents, a series of old photographs scattered across the floor. I bent down, my fingers brushing over the images. Each face in the photos had a story, a memory stuck in time, and they all had one thing in common. They looked lost. Then it hit me. These were the souls trapped in this place. My pulse quickened as I connected the dots.
This was a hotel, I muttered, recalling the stories I had heard about disappearances in the area. My hands began to shake. I needed to get out before this place claimed me too. But the whispers grew louder, almost pleading. I looked at the mirror again, and something new flickered within it. A glint of hope, or perhaps another trap. Before I could decide, the door I'd entered through slammed shut, sealing me inside with the shadows. They were closing in, and I knew it was now or never. I had to flee, but the only way out was through the mirror. With a surge of determination, I stepped toward it, ready to confront whatever awaited me on the other side. I didn't have time to think, only to act. But just as I reached out, a heavy hand landed on my shoulder from behind. And it felt all too familiar. I froze, a jolt of terror rushing through my veins. The hand felt cool, almost spectral. I braced myself. Turning slowly, I came face to face with the woman from the mirror. Her expression was a twist of urgency and sorrow, as if warning me of some impending doom. "Don't!" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, yet it echoed in the confined space. "You mustn't go into the mirror." "Why not?" I stuttered, backing away from her, hoping to distance myself from the growing despair that clung to her like a second skin. "What's going to happen if I do?" "It's a trap," she said, her eyes darting to the mirror, then back to me. "It shows you what you want to see, and once you step through, you may never return." My mind raced. How could a mirror be a trap? But already I could feel the pull, the magnetic allure of the unknown. "What do you mean I won't return?" "The hotel feeds on lost souls," she explained, her voice trembling. "It needs them to survive. It keeps a piece of each person who walks through its doors. I've been here for years, trapped between this world and the next. I'm not the only one." I glanced at the pictures scattered on the floor. Each face haunted me, victims of this cursed hotel. "What do I do?" I demanded, clutching the doll tighter in my pocket, as if its warmth could chase away the creeping darkness. "Find their stories," she urged, her face earnest. "They can help you heal this place. But you don't have much time. Once the clock strikes midnight, the doors lock. The next guest may be you." My heart sank as I glanced toward the cracked window. The daylight was fading. Shadows stretched toward me like grasping fingers. I could already hear the faint whispers, orchestrating a discordant symphony of need and despair. "Will you help me?" I asked, desperate to find a way out of this nightmare. The woman nodded solemnly.
Together, we can free them. Before I could respond, an ear-piercing crack sounded from the mirror. My breath hitched as shards began to scatter, the pieces of glass raining down like falling stars. "Quick, gather them," she shouted. "You need their stories. They can guide you."
I scrambled, collecting the photographs as they skittered across the floor, each one a fragment of a life once lived. The whispers surged again, this time urgent and chaotic. I felt like I could suffocate under their weight. Suddenly, the door behind me quivered violently, as if something or someone was trying to force it open. "Hurry," the woman urged, panic echoing in her voice, "before the midnight bell tolls." I dove for the last photo just as the door burst open. A dark figure loomed in the doorway, shrouded by a thick shadow. Just its presence made my blood run cold. I felt time slip through my fingers. "Don't look away," the woman cried, her eyes wide with fear. I felt the urgency clamp down like a vice around my chest. With everything I had, I turned to the mirror, clutching the photos like talismans. "What do I do now?" I pleaded, my heart pounding against my ribs. But the glass remained silent, and the woman's voice faded into the chaos. I realized it was now or never. I had to make a choice before the darkness engulfed me entirely. I took a hesitant step toward the mirror, heart racing as I faced its fractured surface. The dark figure in the doorway shifted, and I caught a glimpse of something pale and luminous in its depth. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I had to do something, anything, to escape this hell. "Focus on the photographs," I shouted, clutching them harder. "I need your stories." The woman's face was filled with resolve, even as the shadows crept closer. "You must break the cycle. Speak their names." Panic coursed through my veins. "Whose names? I don't know them." "Names and memories, the ones in your hands." She pointed urgently at the photos. "You can't fight this alone." I glanced down at the faces staring back at me. One photo showed a man in a bowler hat, another a girl cradling a red balloon. The eyes in the images seemed to glisten, urging me on, pulling me from fear to curiosity. "Henry," I said, pointing to the man in the hat. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if hit by a gust of wind. "Keep going," the woman urged, her voice growing fainter. "Lucy," I shouted, focusing next on the girl. The shadows rippled, almost as if responding to the names. "David, Margaret, Emily." I rushed through the names, feeling strength kindle within me as each syllable broke the spell of silence around the oppressive darkness. With every name, the atmosphere shifted. The dark figure wavered, its outline blurring. "You can't escape," it hissed, but its voice sounded weaker, lost amid the power of those I invoked. "Go," the woman yelled, desperation tinging her tone. "Complete their stories." I gritted my teeth and stepped closer to the mirror. "You won't take me," I shouted, feeling defiance rise. Henry used to love the music of the night. Lucy held onto her dreams tightly. As I spoke, the mirror shuddered, taking on a luminous quality. Images flared to life behind the glass, each memory a kaleidoscope of emotion. Laughter erupted and sorrows played like a haunting melody. The dark figure lunged at me, and I instinctively raised the photographs like a shield. "I know about you," I cried. "You can't hold them here." Another name flew from my lips unbidden. "Elsie, you were meant for more than this." The moment the name left my mouth, a blinding light erupted from the mirror, engulfing the shadow. It let out a wild shriek, echoing throughout the room. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. As the light began to recede, I realized I could see through the mirror now. Shapes formed, desperate whispers growing clearer. "Help us," they called. "We're still here." The woman from the mirror faded slowly, her expression softening. "You're doing it," she said, her voice now a gentle breeze.
But you're running out of time. I turned back to the mirror, determined to push further, but my breath caught when I noticed the clock on the wall. The hands moved ominously near midnight. I gripped the photographs tighter, an anchor in this storm. Each face felt like a lifeline, but then something cold tugged at my sleeve. I turned, and the darkness loomed again, closer than ever. I had to act fast. I wouldn't let them become another lost memory. "Tell me your stories," I shouted into the mirror, feeling the echo of their lives drawing me in. And then everything went dark. When the world around me darkened, I felt an overwhelming sensation of weightlessness, as if I were being pulled through a tunnel of nothingness. Time stretched and twisted around me, an eternity contained in a breath. Just as I thought I might lose consciousness, light broke open like a fragile shell, flickering into existence. I blinked against the brightness, feeling the cold floor beneath me once more. I was back in the small room from before, the flickering candle still standing sentinel over the strewn photographs. But now the atmosphere felt lighter, charged with a pulse of energy that hadn't been there moments before. I stood up and looked around, a rush of relief washing over me, only to be met with confusion when I saw the woman standing in the corner of the room, her eyes now clearer, the distress replaced with something akin to gratitude. "You did it," she said, softly, her voice almost melodic now. "Where are we?" I gasped, heart racing. "What happened?" The memories of the shadows clawing at me hung in my mind like fog, thick and unyielding. "We're free," she said, nodding towards the mirror that now flickered with an ethereal glow, like sunlight refracting through a prism. As I stepped closer to the mirror, I found it no longer reflected the chaos of the room. Instead, shades of light danced across the surface, images of the faces from the photographs appearing, smiles glowing like warm embers. They smiled at me, quiet thanks palpable in the air. I felt a pang of loss, a bittersweet recognition that I had helped liberate their stories, but that my own escape remained uncertain. "What now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What about me?" The clock on the wall ticked softly, reminding me that time was fleeting. "You must go," she insisted, her gaze steady. "The hotel will soon awaken again, searching for more souls. You must find your way out before it stirs." "But I don't know how." My heart thudded against the confines of my chest as shadows whispered in the corners, remnants of the darkness. "What if I can't leave?" "You already have," she replied, her face softening. "But the path is most clear through the stories you've uncovered. Embrace their memories." I took a deep breath, piecing together what I had felt in the depths of that darkness. "I have to remember them," I murmured, looking back toward the mirror, which now pulsed with a radiant glow, the faces smiling back at me, urging me on. "I can't forget." "Exactly," the woman said, her voice gaining strength. "When you carry their stories, they cannot fade away. You must speak them before the night closes again, before it can reclaim you." I nodded and stepped toward the door, knowing the weight of the unseen burden now lifted, just slightly. Henry loved music. Lucy dreamed often. David's laughter rang like bells, I called, my words echoing, inflaming the air. The shadows receded in response. The woman smiled faintly, fading slowly into the air. "Remember us. You'll not be forgotten." But as her figure dissolved, a thunderous sound echoed through the hotel, rattling the walls and shaking the very foundation beneath me. Panic surged inside as darkness quickened at the corners of the room, leaning in, calling forth its hunger. I dashed for the door, my heart thundering, knowing my time was limited. I raced through the halls, shouting names as I ran, breathing life into the stories of those who had been lost. Each name fueled me with urgency, pushing out the encroaching shadows. The walls vibrated with whispers, the lights flickering as the echoes of their lives wove into a tapestry of strength that surrounded me. In the lobby, the once quiet entrance surged with energy. The receptionist's desk remained vacant, but the front door stood ajar, a shaft of light beckoning from outside. As I crossed the threshold into the night, the cold air washed over me, a sharp contrast to the suffocating darkness within. I stopped to catch my breath, clutching the doll close to my chest, its warmth intertwining with the coolness of the night outside. The hotel loomed behind me, imposing and silent, a place where shadows lingered, hungry. Did I truly escape? Or was the hotel merely biding its time until the next soul wandered too deep? I didn't know, but I moved on, carrying fragments of their stories, now a part of me.
I still think about it sometimes, the weight of the hotel and the darkness that thirsted at its edges. I can still picture the doll and those pale faces behind the glass. It changed how I see things. As I walked away, I understood that the truth I uncovered wouldn't give me all the answers. After escaping, I could never shake the feeling that some memories lingered in shadows, and perhaps some mysteries were meant to remain.